This is the step-by-step guide on how to edit your first drone video in DaVinci Resolve. In this video, we'll cover how to edit. So that goes from importing your footage, creating a timeline, organizing your shots, adding music, cutting to the music. Then we'll jump into the color page and go over the basics of color grading, how to match your footage. Then we'll even do a bonus, which is adding sound design, adding that extra bit of pizzazz to your shots. And then we'll end it on exporting your footage. Now, if you want the condensed version of this, I'll post a video doing that. But the reason I think the long version may be valuable is if you're a complete beginner, I'll go through my thought process as I'm looking at the clips, as I'm making certain decisions, and I'll kind of talk over it with you. That way you can kind of get an idea of what to look for and how you might think about certain decisions that you make. So if this is the one that you want, then let's get right into it. So first, you need to download DaVinci Resolve. Or if you have an editor, that's fine. But in this video, I'll be using DaVinci Resolve, and this one is version 20. So go to their website and download that. And it installs like any other program, so I won't go over that in this video. But once you've downloaded and installed it, let's get started. Now that you have DaVinci Resolve installed in your computer, it's time to bring over your footage. So take the memory card out of your drone, and you may have to use an adapter to do this, but then insert it into your computer, and we'll show you how to transfer the footage. So you always want to create folders for your project. So your folders could be one folder for your footage, another folder for any music that you're going to use. You can also have a folder for sound effects and anything else, maybe B-roll or whatever other assets you have. But the idea is you want it to be organized. Now, it may feel tedious to do all of this, but it'll help you down the line. Now, the first thing we're going to go and grab is a LUT. So LUT is an acronym, L-U-T. It stands for lookup table. A LUT is basically a preset that transforms the footage from the log profile into something that looks closer to what it would have been in real life. So if you turned on that mode where you turn on the log profile, desync alike, D-log, or whichever log profile you have, then your drone's footage now will look kind of gray, a little bit washed out, low contrast and low saturation. So by getting this LUT, this does the math for us, so we don't have to try and figure out what the footage actually looked like. It'll try and convert it and get it as close as it was in real life. You know the process to getting your LUT. You can go to, if you're flying with DJI, their website has a section that has all the LUTs, but you can also download a version from the internet. People make LUTs all the time. So now we can open Resolve. We're going to click on New Project, and we're going to name our project. So this one is going to be my first drone video. Then hit Create. So if you've done it correctly, your project should look something like this. We'll do a quick tour of DaVinci Resolve. We're not going to touch all the areas in this video, but just so you know what they are and where they are, we'll do that. So the first page that you'd normally be on would be the cut page. And to find the pages, just look at the bottom of the screen. So this little parallelogram with the dashes is the cut page. We're not going to use the cut page too much because a lot of the things that we can do in the cut page, we can also do in the edit page. So instead of learning a bunch of different pages, we'll try and do as many things as we can in one page. But before I get started, the purpose of this tutorial is not to do it the fastest way possible, because the fastest way possible requires a lot more knowledge. You'll need shortcuts, you'll need to know specific tools, but I think it'd be better for you if we go over maybe not the fastest way, but the simplest way. So using the least amount of clicking and tools possible, least amount of shortcuts possible, so that way you don't have a lot of things to remember, but it's more intuitive. All right, so if you go back down to this page, this is the cut page like we mentioned. The one to the left of it is the media pool. So if you're handling a lot of footage, this is where you go to analyze and organize them. But once again, we're going to leave this one alone. The next one is the cut page. The one after that is the edit page. So if you look at the edit page, you'll see at the top of the screen, you'll see a tab called Media Pool. So if I click that, it pops up this section here. So the way DaVinci Resolve is organized is into panels, where each tool has its own panel. And within those panels are several other tools that you can use. So inside the edit page, there's already a media pool. So that's why if you're not handling a lot of footage, you don't really have to go into the media pool page itself. There's also this panel already open. This one is your effects, and you can click up here to turn that off. You also have over here, this panel, which says nothing to inspect. This is called your inspector. So whenever you're handling any assets in DaVinci Resolve, there's going to be an inspector somewhere. And basically, it's a way to control certain aspects of your video, your audio, and so on. It's also where you can find how to apply your effects. So I'll click that just to see that you can turn it off and on. In the middle of the screen, you have this gray area and this black rectangle. So this rectangle is your viewer, and this gray area is where the viewer lives. So you can, depending on how big your screen is, it may make sense for you, but you can have single viewer or double viewer mode. So for this tutorial, we'll just go with single viewer like this. So right now you see the black rectangle disappeared because there's nothing on our timeline. And speaking of timeline, this bottom section here is the timeline. So you can make it bigger or smaller by hovering over this black line. So that shrinks the viewer at the top and it makes the timeline bigger. Now this little gray line here separates your audio from your video, but once we start loading in clips, we'll cover that a little bit more detail. We'll also cover some of these tools up here as we work with them. The next page is the Fusion page. Now, we won't be touching this at all, but just so you know, this is where you can do special effects, where you can have a little bit more nuance in your controls. You can do keys and things like that. The next one over is the color page. We will be going into this one when it's time to color grade the video, but for now, this is what it looks like. The next one over is called Fairlight. That's where you do any extensive audio processing. We won't be using this one because we can do a lot of the audio processing that we need to do in the edit page already. So once again, we're using the minimum amount of pages necessary. And then this last one that looks like a rocket ship, this is your deliver page. This is where you export your video. So let's jump back over to the edit page. Now, before we get started in Resolve, we want to go to this bottom corner right here and click the cog. That's going to open up our project settings. Now, for our project settings, there are a few things that we want to make sure we have right. So first is the timeline resolution. If you shot in 4K on your drone, which you should have, or if your drone has even more resolution than that, maybe 5 or 6K, this is where you'd set it to whatever resolution that you shot in. So we shot in 4K, which is 3840 by 2160 Ultra HD. So that's the setting that we'll choose. These can stay the same. The timeline frame rate, we shot in 30 frames per second. So we'll leave that there, as well as the playback frame rate, 30 frames per second. Now, if I remember correctly, these don't really have any. Yeah, we can ignore these. So now the next setting that we'll go to is our color management. Now, because we're doing color grading and because we also shot in log profile, we want to change these. So this one, if it's already on DaVinci YRGB, then you're good to go. If not, then select DaVinci YRGB. For our timeline color space, we're going to go with DaVinci WG/intermediate. And then for our output color space, we're going to go with Rec 709 Gamma 2.2. Now, here's where we'll do a little bit more. So down below, you'll see this button called Open LUT Folder. And when you click on that, it will open this folder here. I'll drag it across. Now this is the folder that's inside of DaVinci where all the LUTs are stored. So remember, we just got our LUT from the internet, so you may have to go to your downloads folder to grab it. But I'm going to grab it from, I already have mine, so I'm going to grab it and drag it across. And I'm looking for the DJI folder right here, and I'm going to drop it in there. And it's going to copy it over. So if you're flying with DJI, that's a good place to drop yours, but it doesn't really matter where exactly you drop it, you'll always be able to find it. But we want to be organized. So I'll put it into the DJI folder and we can close that. Then you can click Update Lists and you should be good to go. That's our project settings. We're going to click Save. Now we're going to import the footage and the music. So I have my folder here with my drone footage. So I'm just going to drag them and copy them drag them right onto the timeline. Now this box pops up that says change project frame rate. So because we shot in 30 frames per second and the timeline is already in 30 frames per second, I'm just going to click don't change. But if in case you did use a different frame rate, maybe if you shot in 24, then you click change and it will adjust it to the setting that you used. But I shot in 30, so I'm going to click don't change. And now it's loaded my clips into the timeline. Remember that gray line that I talked about? Now you can see what it is. We have the videos above the gray line, and the audio is below the gray line. So since drones don't shoot audio, at least, let me not say that. Most drones may not shoot audio because all you'd hear is the zzz sound. They only shoot video. So that's why there's no audio currently there. I think newer drones may start to shoot audio and try and filter out that sound. But these are the clips. I have 6 clips. Let's take a quick look at them just so we get an idea of what we're working with. So to play, this is one shortcut that is very useful. It's just a space bar. So you can click anywhere in Resolve and then press the space bar and it'll start to play your video. Now, if you notice the video looks washed out, that's because our LUT has not been applied yet. We're still looking at the log footage. Now this red line with the kind of triangle shape at the top, this is your playhead. And as you can see, as it moves across the video, it plays the video. So if we wanted to look back at something, we can click the playhead and drag it right back to the beginning or drag it to any point in the video that we want. You can also drag it across the entire timeline so that we can look at the videos a lot quicker. So that's called your playhead. Okay. So we'll just scan through the videos just to see, remember those 3 questions we asked? What's your establishing shot? What's your medium shot? And what's your top-down shot? So let's see if we can find those. So this is clearly a top-down shot. This one would be a medium shot because we're pretty close to the subject. This would also be a medium shot. This would be a push-in. So we're starting a little bit further back. It's not quite an establishing shot because we can't really see too much of the surroundings. And we push in pretty close to the subject. So that would be a medium shot for us. This one is another top-down. But instead of going straight up, this one is holding the height and following that boat. This would be an establishing shot because we can see the subject, we can see the surrounding areas. And this is another version of an establishing shot from a different angle. So we have stuff that we can work with. So now that we have those, I'll just put them in quick order just to kind of get ourselves organized a little bit. So taking a look at this, do we like this as an establishing shot? What do you think? Don't be scared, you can tell me. So this is pretty nice. I do like, let's see. Let's use this one. So I just clicked on it and I dragged it up. So what just happened is it made a second track. So now in the Resolve, you can have almost unlimited. It's very rare that you hit the end of it, I think, but you can have unlimited amounts of tracks. So you'd notice if I have this video now on track 2, above track 1, if I carry my playhead over right here and I press play, take a look at what happens. So I'm currently seeing this video, that top-down shot, and then it switched to the establishing shot. So what you're seeing is the topmost track at any given point in time. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you're trying to work on some footage and you're not seeing it, there may be a clip above it that's blocking your view. So for now, I'll leave this one on the top track and I'll drag it to the beginning. And I'll press space to pause. So now I'm going to find a medium shot. So if I just clicked on this, the time markers at the top, and the first thing I'm noticing is the villas. So this is a good shot to go into next. And I have 2 clips of the villas. I have this one here, which is moving from right to left. And I have this one here, which is pushing into them. So in terms of how something would make sense, it makes sense that you'd move from far away and go in before you were in close and moving from right to left. That makes sense. So instead of doing this closer shot first and then pushing into them, the more natural thing to do would be push into them and then have a closer detailed look at them. So once we've done those, then if you remember at the beginning, we had the top-down shot of the villas. Now we can throw that there. So after we've scanned them from the side, we can zoom back out and look at them from above. Nice. So these are the order of our first couple shots. We have the establishing shot, the push-in, which gets us close to the villas, then a detailed right to left movement, and then a top-down. We also have a top-down here tracking that boat. I'm not sure if I'm feeling where exactly this one is going to fit in just yet. It could probably fit in after we do this one as it's zooming out, then maybe transition over, which would then lead us back to maybe this one to close it out. So let's work with that. But since we're good with the order of the clips now, I'll just click and drag like this. So once you see the red outline, that means the clips are selected, and we'll drag it down back into track 1. So now we have a general order of how the footage will be played. But you can notice the clips are a bit long, and also there's the moments in the beginning where the drone is still being positioned correctly like that before the actual move starts. So we want to trim the clips. So in order to do that, let's get some music in first. So I'm going to go back to my folder and I'm going to grab this super cool song. And I just click and I drag it into the timeline and automatically it'll go on to the audio track. So we can take a listen to the song. All right, so that song is just about a minute long. Now, for our first video, that's way too long. So we're gonna want to trim this track down a bit. Now, if you look at it, you'll see that there are these little spikes or these little fatter portions of the song. Now, those are good indication of where the beats are or the main beats. So if you just go back a little bit and play this piece with this, oh, you can also hover over the bottom of audio one, and if you drag it, it'll expose the waveform a little bit more clearly. So then I'm going to press spacebar now. So you hear that first beat, that boom. And if you jump down a little bit, you're going to hear the second one. So those are good points for us to maybe even start and end our song or cut to different clips. So we only want maybe 15, 20 seconds of this song. I really like the way it ends, where it kind of fades out. So instead of starting it from the beginning, let's see if we can find a point closer to the end where we can make that the beginning of the song. So let's listen to this piece. One more time. I think that sounds like a good spot. So let's try and find where we want it to cut it. So if you go back up to here, you'll see the ruler and a magnifying glass. Now these are your zooms for your timeline. So right now it's on full extent zoom. So this one will show you everything in your timeline in one go. All right, so if you have a really long timeline, maybe over an hour long, it will show you everything. And I'll show you quickly what it looks like if I delete this clip, for instance, and I remove its space. See, everything got slightly bigger because now the timeline is shorter, so it's still showing you everything. And if I added more clips, everything will get smaller. So I'll just do Command Z and one more time to undo, just like regular. All right, so I want to focus in on this timeline and get this a little, oh, sorry, not the timeline, but this audio clip and get it a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna click Detail Zoom, but now this is way too big. I can't really see, like this is way too much to try and focus on. I need something in between. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click this minus sign here, and that gets me out a little bit. And I can even drag this ball, this circle, until I get a nice sized timeline. So that's pretty good. And the way I'm scrolling on the timeline is just using 2 fingers on the trackpad, like a regular scroll, but moving sideways. So now I can see a little bit more clearly what I'm working with. Let's see if we can get it a little bit bigger. Yeah, we'll work with that. So it's a little big, but we'll be able to see clearly what we're doing. So now we're looking for the point where we want to start the song. So I'm going to make this track a little bit bigger so I can isolate those waves. And I'll pull this up and pull this down. There we go. So let's see if we can find it now. I think it's right there. I think it's right there. Okay, so now we have the point where we're going to be that's going to be the new start for our song. What I'm going to do is click on this little razor blade looking tool, and I'm going to come right over the playhead. I'm going to click once. I'm going to go back and click the regular cursor. So what that did is it cut the clip. If you do want a shortcut, because this is a pretty common thing to do, it would be Command B on Mac, sorry. So now let's listen to this piece. Nice. So we get the same feeling of the song, but now we don't have the entire song for the full minute. We have, maybe 15 seconds. So now we can click on the first part. I'll just come back out to the full extent zoom so you can see what happened. So we'll take this first part and press delete on the keyboard. And then I'll click on this one and I'll drag it to the beginning. So now we have to fit these 6 clips into this audio. All right, that's the challenge. So let's take a look at it. So I'm going to zoom back in. So now I want my audio to take up most of the screen. And I'm going to try and find the best parts of these clips. So oftentimes when you are flying, the very beginning, you may still be tweaking the angles or tweaking the speed that the drone is moving. And remember I said film 3 seconds before and 3 seconds after. This is the reason why. Because oftentimes those little micro adjustments that you make before the actual thing, you're going to want to cut those out. So I'll show you an example. Here I have about 4 seconds where I pressed record and then I didn't quite like the way I framed it, so then I made an adjustment before I started flying. So for this video, we're gonna do it based off of feel. Like, this is not the most ideal way to do it, but in terms of keeping it simple, we'll do it based off of feel. So let's grab this clip and I want to find the point where I think it's good. It starts to be like, this is a good clip. And for now, we'll hit this M to mute the track so you don't have to listen to the song too much. It gets annoying after a while. So I'm just going to play, and I'm going to look for the point where, right about here, I see that the drone is stable and the speed is stable. I'm going to come to the beginning of the clip, and you see my pointer, it changes to this shape. A triangle with a line with a rectangle behind of it. Now I'm just hovering over it, and then it can also change to this shape with 2 lines with 2 triangles. So I'm looking for this shape. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. I'm going to drag it all the way to the playhead. And if you notice, when I get close, it kind of just snaps to the playhead. So that's a feature called right here, snapping, which is this magnet. If you want that, you can leave it highlighted. If you don't, you can turn it off and then it won't snap automatically. But snapping is good because if you have the playhead exactly where you want something to happen, then you can just snap it to it. So I like to leave it on, and I'm going to snap right to the playhead. So that's where I want my clip to start. So now I'm going to click on the clip. I'm just going to drag it across. So now it's at the beginning of the timeline. So if I start to play from the beginning, instantly I don't have any of the pre-movements. It's just the clip. And it's a beautiful clip. Very nice. But the clip has taken up the entire length of the song. So we need to find the ending point for it. So for now, we'll do some rough cuts. So let's turn back on the track. We'll also turn down the music, the volume over here, just a bit. And let's see where's a good point. So we're listening to the music now to try and figure out where's a point that we can cut. So I'm going to press spacebar. And I think the beat was about to drop there. So about 2 seconds. And just so you know, this time, this measurement of time here, this last one is your frames. So we're shooting in 30 frames, or we're editing in 30 frames. So if I just go back to the beginning, I'll mute it again. But once you, just pressing spacebar, but once you get to 28, if you go one more frame, 29, and if you go one more frame, it gets 1 second. So you'll never see 30 here because we're shooting in 30 frames per second. So at 30 frames, it adds a second. So now we have 1 second. And the next one would be 1 second and 1 frame. Now to move frame by frame, I'm just pressing the left key or the right key. So the right key moves it a frame to the right, and the left key moves it a frame to the left. So once again, let's go back and we're going to listen for where the beat's going to drop. Oh, need to unmute. So like that one. So this right there. So I'm going to use my shortcut, Command B. I'm making sure the clip is selected. If I do it without selecting the clip, it will cut both the video and the audio. I don't really want that. So I'm going to do Command Z and then select the video clip, Command B. So now I've separated it. And if I zoom out, you'll see what I'm about to do. So I'm going to get rid of all of this footage. I'm just going to press the delete key. And then I'm going to bring in the next clip like that. I'm going to zoom back in. So you saw me just click this one. This one is the custom zoom. I know I've set my zoom pretty well. I customized it here with the plus and the minus key buttons. So I'm going to click the custom zoom to zoom back in like that. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this clip. I'm going to look for the point where I want the clip to start. So I'll mute. Okay, so this is a good point for it to end because any closer, oh, that's nice. Those birds moving. Let's think about that. We'll see if we want those birds. But what I do like a lot is this part here, where this boat moves from inside the picture to outside the picture. I think that's a good movement to have. So this here is a good point. So I'm going to press Command B, making sure that it's selected. And then I'm going to press delete on the first part. I'm going to drag it across like that. Now you saw the boat move. That's because the playhead is here. If I put the playhead back, you'll see the boat is at the beginning of the clip. So now let's go back to the beginning. We'll unmute and listen to what we have so far. So I did it automatically. I'm sorry. But I just pressed spacebar because I felt the music was going to jump to the next one. So let's do that for that. Let's do it. Command B to cut the clip here. We'll press delete. I'll zoom back out. I'll grab the next clip. I'll drag it over. And then I'll press the custom zoom to go back in. And we'll try and find another point. So you saw the drone went back over first. So we'll get rid of that piece. And we do have some birds here, so that's nice. And there are the birds here again. Okay, so this middle portion here seems like it's a good point to be. So let's scrub through. And maybe right when this one starts to disappear, I'll make a cut here and delete. Let me zoom back out, drag it across, move back over it, and go back in. Let's take a listen and see. So the question is, do we want this piece or do we want the piece with the birds? So let's take a look where we'd find the birds. Okay, that's one bird there. That's a couple more. Okay, so we have a few here. So let's look for where the birds. So the birds are right here. I'll do just before they fly into the screen. So right there, I'll make the cut. Delete. Now I'll drag it over. So now as the clip starts, the birds are coming into the frame. And that's nice. Whenever you have movement like that, oh, we also have people. But it's gonna be too long. So let's take a listen and see where we need to cut it. And I can also bring these over. Yeah, and then zoom back in. So let's go from the top, unmute. All right, so I heard it somewhere in here. Let's go again. I think it's right there. So I'll select the clip, cut, and then delete. Now, when editing, you kind of got to be a little bit heartless. So you love your footage. You took so much time to film it. It's your baby, but sometimes you just got to cut. So let's bring sorry, not select all of them. Bring over the next one. I'll do the zoom in, and let's do the same thing. Just mute. Maybe about here is a good point. I think all the issues were ironed out. Drag this over. Okay. So I think I have a little bit of an idea of what I want to do with this. But for now, let's find where we can make a cut. Think right there. Let's press delete. So we don't have much song left. So let's try the last shot and see if we can end on that one. Okay, so that one actually starts pretty well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that one starts well. So we're gonna do the same thing we did in the beginning. Look for this shape, or this icon, and drag it to the end. So I have a little bit of idea for this piece because we do have maybe another clip could fit. But let's take a listen to the whole thing. All right. So I like that. I think for our first video, that's solid. We won't use this. I mean, this is a okay shot. And yeah, we'll stick with this. This is good. So you see how at the end we kind of fade out? Let's add a little spice. Let's add a little spice. So when the song fades out, as the song fades out, we'll also fade out the clip. So right about here. So what you're gonna look for is hover your mouse on the clip and look for this little white, I don't know what you call that. Whatever that little white thing is. And then you're gonna drag it, click it and drag it over to, let's start with the play headers and see how that feels. But what this is gonna do, it's gonna take your clip and lower the opacity slowly until it's completely black. It's called the fade out. You can also do it at the beginning of your clip, and that's called a fade in. So you can go from completely black to the clip or the clip to completely black. Let's see how this piece feels. That's nice. So we do have a bit of silence at the end of this song. So let's take that out. So I'm going to select the audio. I'm going to press, actually, I'm not going to select the audio. I'm going to leave it open and press Command B. So it cuts both the audio and the video at the same time. And I'm going to highlight the two of them, press delete, and then we'll add back in that fade out. Let's see how that sounds. That's nice. That's nice. Do we want to do it at the beginning? What do you think? Anybody ever tell you don't really say much? Okay. Let's see how it feels. Let's do a little one. A little one. We don't want it too long. Let's see how that feels. Now that was too quick. So let's see if we went maybe 3 times as long. That's not bad. That's not bad. Let's go a little bit more. That's nice. That's nice. All right, so let's see what the whole video looks like. Okay, so there's a little weird feeling I get in this section here. Let me see if you can see it. It almost feels like it's dragged. It's not really fitting to the music quite well. Let's look at it one more time and figure it out. Yeah, it's almost as if it wants to, this one with the top down needs to end earlier. So let's see if we can find where that should be. Maybe here. Now, instead of doing this one, where it drags, this one drags just one clip. If you hover over the middle, then it does the two, and that drags both clips. But this one isn't long enough to do that, so I'll have to do it another way. But you can drag this one here, and then carry this over, and then we'll extend this one back out. But if it, now it should be long enough, I'll show you what it means, where you can drag these two like that. So instead of just moving the edge of one, you can adjust the end and the beginning of the two clips at the same time. Let's see how this feels now. Yeah, I think that's better. Excellent. So now our footage fits the music. Beautiful. But there's a little bit more we can do with it. But honestly, I'm tired of seeing this gray, washed out looking footage. So let's jump to the color page and do some coloring. So we're going to go down to the bottom and click the color page. And now it opens up right here. In your color page, you have a number of panels. And this is probably the most confusing looking section of DaVinci Resolve that you'll come up in this video. But we're going to do the same thing we did at the beginning. Let's turn off things. Let's turn off things and simplify it down. So just like the edit page, you have a viewer. That's where you can see the clips that you're working with. In this bottom left corner, you have your primaries. If you're not seeing it like this, you'd go to this button here, the circle with the dot, not the one that says HDR, but the one next to it. And then if you're not seeing this exact one that says lift, gamma, gain, and offset, then click this one. Sometimes it might be open on this one that says shadow, midtone, highlights, offset, but we're looking for this one by itself. So primaries right here. We're looking at the color wheels. Now, the next thing is your curves. So these 6, they're controlled in this bottom left panel. Once again, we'll focus on the primaries. And then these, I think it's 10, 4, 8, 10. Yeah. These are controlled in this middle panel here. So these are your curves and some other tools. You have windows, trackers, you can do blur, keys, all those things. And then this last frame over here, we have keyframes if you need that, or you have scopes. We're going to use scopes. So scopes are, if you remember the video on histograms, scopes are very similar, like cousins to the histogram. And some of them even have a form of a histogram in them. I think there's even a histogram right here, right? So it's a slightly different looking. It's separated into the red, green, and blue channels. But this is a histogram showing you what the darkest parts of the image are, what the lightest parts of the image are. Now, if you go to this one, the waveform, this one shows you the same thing, but it's top down. So the bottom is completely black and the top is completely white. And it shows you the individual colors and where they sit in the image. Want to see something interesting? If you come to the 3 dots here and you click Display Qualifier Focus, now if you hover over the image, if you look back on the bottom corner, I can't do both at the same time, but it will show you what part of the image you're currently hovering over. So for instance, if I was to take a look at the sand and go over the sand, you can see that it's one of the brightest things in the image because those 3 dots, those 3 circles are hovering at the very top. So the sand is the brightest thing in the image. The water sits right in the middle, along with almost everything else. Where do you think these umbrellas would be? Umbrellas right back at the top, because they're white. Same with the boat. The boat's gonna be closer to the top. And let's find something dark. Maybe this patch here. That's the darkest thing in the image. That patch of shadow. Maybe this one here too. In right between here. That's a little bit dark, yeah. So now you can see when you are over the light parts, you're closer to the top. And when you hover over the dark parts, you're close to the bottom. So let's go back to the top of our window and click on nodes. So nodes, this one here that's selected in red, this is a node. Now a node is a way for you to make an adjustment on your image. It's good to separate your adjustments by different nodes so that way if you need to make changes, you can always know where to find them. But once again, for this, we're going to keep it very simple. The first thing we're going to do is add a new node. So we already have node 1 here, but if you right click, you go to add node, then you click add serial. And now we have 2 nodes. Now the way nodes work is the image that we have comes out of this green dot and it moves along this path into the first node. Then that node does whatever it wants to do to the image, and the resulting image comes out of this green square through the green triangle into the second node. Now the second node does what it has to do to the image, and then that comes out of the green square over to this green circle again. And that's what we end up seeing. Let's take a look at that in action, just so we understand it. So if I click on my first node, and I come down to my primaries, color wheels, and I go to the offset controls basically the entire image. You can make it brighter by turning it up, or you can make it darker by turning it down. So let's darken the image like that. And now you can see on node 1, this little icon popped up, meaning that a change happened, and it's telling you what tool the change was done in. Now, if I break this connection here, you can see that it goes back to the way it looked before. Now, if I take this node out the way and I break this connection here and I go straight through, nothing changed. That's because I am not putting the image through this adjustment anymore. I'm going straight from the source through this node, which does nothing, and back out. But now if I drag this node over and when the line turns yellow, I drop it, see the image changed? So now it's passing through this node again, right? So that's just something to remember whenever you're using nodes. You may have many nodes up here that are all making adjustments, but if they're not connected, nothing will happen. So let's reset. So you can always reset by hitting this arrow in a circle. You can also look for the arrow in a circle with a plus sign, and that resets the entire panel. So each panel has one of those. So the first thing we're going to do is grab the second node. So node number 2, we're going to right click and go to LUT. Then remember we dropped our LUT into the DJI folder. So I'm going into the DJI folder and I'm going to select DJI Decinelec to Rec 709. And boom, look at that. That looks great. We're done. So now this LUT has basically said, here's the math I did on the image, the gray washed out looking image, and this is what your camera actually saw. And it renders it out like that. So, hey, if this looks good to you, feel free to move on, right? But we're gonna do this for each of the clips so that we can see what we're working with. And at first it'll look great, but then when your eye gets trained a little bit, you'll start to see, oh, we can make some adjustments and make it a little bit better. So we're trying to see where our clips are, but we turned off our clips. So if you come back to the top left, you can click clips, and there we have the 5 of them. So let's do the same thing with this next one. So we have one node here. So we'll drag it down. We'll add node. Right click, LUT, DJI, Decinelec to Rec 709. And boom, we have our second image. We'll do that for the next one. Now you can see this one is significantly darker than these first two, right? This one is super bright, this one is not as bright, and then this one gets darker. So the sun kind of shifted between these shots. So that's why we got a color grade. So we make it seem like it didn't shift at all. So that's the next one. We'll do the next one. Great. So now we have all of our clips with the LUT applied. Now, if you go back to this first one, you'll see that it's black. Just remember, that's because we did a fade in. So the clip doesn't really show up until a few seconds into it. So just keep that in mind in case that happens to you. But now we're going to try and do some light grading, right? So taking a look at our scopes, you can see we have a pretty good balanced image here. We have a lot of details, a lot of colors, and they're fitting, nothing's hitting the ground of the waveform. And we do have something hitting the top. Now you see how this top line has some white here, but if you come over to this side, there's no white. That's because on this side of the image, so these go from left to right. So anything on the left side of the image is over here. Anything on the right side of the image is over here. So there's no bright spots on the right side of the image, That's why the line isn't white over here. But we do have bright spots here, and that's when it's being clipped. So if you look at the sand, it's being clipped. It's starting to go into that danger zone where it's almost becoming pure white. So we don't want that. We want to protect our sand. So we're going to go back to node 1, and we'll try a couple different things and see which one works best. So we know the whole image is sitting in this range, so that's nice. But let's see what happens if we move the offset down. So we're going to move our offset down until we slew right about here, we stop having the clipping at the top. So the image still looks pretty decent. We start to go down and start to touch this line, maybe in the shadowy area here. But overall, it's not too bad. Let's reset and try a slightly different one. So this one is called gain, and this is responsible for controlling the highlights of the image, or the brightest parts of the image. So if we turn this dial down on the gain, you can see that instead of moving the entire image, it kind of just brings the top part down more than anything else. See, even the bottom here doesn't really move that much. So if we move the gain down, we've achieved a slightly nicer effect, because the sand is no longer being clipped, but we haven't sent everything that was dark already down any further. So that's a nice adjustment. That looks beautiful. Now, to see the difference between what you just did and what it was before, you can click on the number of the node. So if you click the number, that's what it was before. You see how the node's grayed out? If you click it again, that's where it is after. So we've lowered the brightness of the top part of the image, and we've gotten it back under control. So now our sand isn't completely white. Let's jump over to the next one. So here we have pretty good scenario. The image has good separation in the colors. We have a lot of details, barely anything below this line, and we only have a smidge of clipping. Let's see if we can find where that is. And I believe that's in the, oh, is that the boat? Yeah, that's the boat right here on the boat. Now, you don't have to fight every single thing that's clipping. To, to the eye, this doesn't stand out as being, oh, I can't tell what's happening here. We can try a little bit of an adjustment to see what we can do, but there's not much detail here to see anyway. It's a pure white boat. So let's do a similar thing. We already have some of the image below, so let's do the gain alone and just back the gain off a smidge. And that kind of helps the boat, but it also kind of ruins the rest of it. It kind of makes it darker. So let's reset and see. We can actually compare it to the one before to see, is it that off or are we in a good spot? So we'll come back to the one before. So looking at that, that's actually a pretty good transition. We'll take that for now. Let's move on to the next one. So this one is clearly darker. You can see at the bottom of the scope, we're hitting the bottom. So let's grab the offset and pull the whole thing up. And we're watching the scopes, and we're just having some of the fringes below that line. But now if you compare from this to this, that's a better spot than if we turn this node off, this to this. You can tell, all right? So let's turn that back on. We like that so far. So we're working through these clips, just trying to get them all to be around the same brightness level, kind of look like it's one continuous scene. Let's see what we can do with this one. So maybe a bit of offset here. Yep. And now compare that to that. That's pretty good. Then this last one. So we do have the same issue as the beginning. We have some clipping at the top, That's probably the sand again. Sand does not want to behave. So we're going to try the gain down a bit on just until the sand behaves. And let's see this to this. That's not bad. All right. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's jump to the middle of this clip here. So now look at the colors in this. Look at the colors. Look at the difference in the brightness as well. We have this really bright sand and this really dark area. Not really, really dark, but darkish area. Let's see if we can make this look more aesthetically pleasing. So there's two controls in your primaries. One is the contrast here, and the other one is your saturation down here. Now in your contrast, what it does, it separates the bright ones, the bright parts of the image from the dark ones. So if we click on the box and drag to the right, we're adding contrast. Now we can add way too much contrast like that. Or if we go the opposite direction, we can take away contrast until it turns completely gray. So we want something that looks nice. So in order to reset a tool, almost every tool resets by double clicking on the name. So this is where we started. Let's add a little bit of contrast to the image. And you want to go a little bit too much and then bring it back. Just bring it until it feels natural. I think right about there is good. Right? We've introduced a little bit of that clipping, but that's okay. We'll work with this. But now we have some difference between the middle pieces of the image, where dark things are darkened, things that would have been brighter are brighter. Now let's go down to the saturation. It's currently at 50. Now, the same principle, you can go way too much and have it kind of look fake. And you can go all the way till you get black and white. So once again, double click the saturation to reset it. Let's see if you can just add a smidge if we need to. Maybe just about that. That's nice. All of this, you want to be tasteful, right? So we'll live with that for now. Let's jump over to the next clip and we'll do the same thing. So first, contrast. We'll add some contrast here. Add too much and then back it off. That's sitting pretty nice. Take a look at what it's like before and after. It's very, very subtle. And then we'll add a little bit of saturation as well. That's nice. That's very, very nice. All right, nothing crazy. Let's move to the next one. Same thing, contrast. That's too much. And back it off. And then add some saturation. That's right. Oh, that's nice. All right, next one. All right, there. And then some saturation. Don't want to go too crazy here. Something like that. Let's just see what we're looking like so far. All of these look like they're around the same time. They're same place, same time. That's what we're looking for. Let's do the last one. Add some contrast in. Not too much. And add some saturation. Now let's take a look at it from the beginning. And what we're looking for is we want to make sure that there's no crazy jumps between the different colors in the image, where one image is very saturated and then the next one isn't, or one image is very contrasting and the next one isn't. Want it to feel like this was the exact same point in time, even though these clips were shot maybe within an hour apart of each other or more. So let's play it from the beginning. That's pretty sweet. All right, so we're gonna call it here. color grading does not, like, you can do too much or you can do just enough. We're going to do just enough. So we like that. So now let's jump back into the edit page. Let's just shrink that a little bit. And we're able to see our entire video now. Now we want to add in some sound design. This is a bonus tip here. So there's a bunch of websites where you can get free sound design, but sound design is basically sounds that you would expect to hear as you see certain things pass the screen. So for example, if you see those birds flying by, you may normally expect to hear the sounds of birds. Or if you see the waves crashing on the shore, then you would expect to hear them as well. So sound design really adds some life to the video. It makes it more immersive as well. So let's go and do that. As I mentioned, you can always Google websites that do sound design, where you can download sound design, I should say. I just have a handful here already. So as we looked at the video, there was moments where there was a boat. There was moments where there were waves. There were moments where there were birds. And there's also, like, in general, when you're by the beach, you normally hear a lot of wind as well. So those are the 4 sounds that I'm going to use. I'm going to see where they fit. If they all fit, maybe I might not use all of them. So first, we'll mute the audio track and just take a look at our video one more time. So as we go through this first shot, what in this shot can we hear or would make sounds? So you can see here, there's some birds flying. There's also a boat here, but that boat's not moving. Here again, there's a boat, but it's not moving, and it's a sailboat. Here we have some birds flying. Nothing really in this one, and no movement in this one. Okay, so let's jump back to about here. The first thing that we can add is some wind. So it's nothing too crazy, but just a slight wind track. This one is very long, but this is just going to add some, like, texture to our video. Because whenever the drone is flying and you're up high, you're going to feel some sort of wind. So let's play that and see what that sounds like with the wind. All right, so that wind may be a little too strong, especially for some of these shots where nothing is clearly blowing. So we're going to save the wind for these higher shots when the drone is higher up in the air. And then when it comes down to this level where we can't clearly see anything blowing in the wind, then we'll cut it. So let's cut the wind here. We'll move on. This one doesn't really have anything blowing. This one doesn't. And then this one again, we'll move this down just because that last part of the clip is really loud. And then we'll cut this off here. Let me get rid of that. Now, this track, just so that we can keep tabs on this, we'll call this track wind. Now, if you click on the track itself, and then we come up to audio, let's lower that volume so it's not nearly as obnoxious as it is now. Let's see what that sounds like. So you can barely hear it now. So let's bring it back up a bit. That's a little bit more subtle. All right. So let's note that we have a fade out here. So let's do something similar with our wind on this side. Let's drag it so it fades out with the clip. And whenever you're starting a sound effect, a very simple thing to do that adds a lot of quality is to fade the sound effect in and out. Because when a sound starts like rapidly, it almost makes like a click sound or a pop sound, like a tick, and then the sound comes in. But if you fade it in, then it just kind of ramps slowly like how a sound would normally be in real life. So let's do that with these. If you do use sound effects from a paid website, they may have this already done. So the sound effects are a little bit higher quality. But if you're using free sites or you're recording your own sound effects, which you can go and do, that's fine. You may want to just add a little bit of a fade in and out so that you don't get that sound. So we'll add a short one here, and we'll do the same thing on this first track as well. Now let's see what that sounds like. That's not bad. That's not bad. Let's move on to the next thing. We saw birds a few times. So first time we see them, they're here. You see a few birds here. So let's grab our seagull sound and drop that in. Now these are all very long tracks. So let's lower that down. And now it's also kind of good to think about how far away is the sound. Because if something is very close, it's naturally going to be louder than something that's far away. So if you look at this video, you see the seagulls are way down here, right? The drone's pretty high up at this point. So we're gonna put the seagull sound, but lower the volume significantly compared to, I think on this clip here, where they're right there, then we can have it a smidge louder. Make sense? So let's jump back into our timeline. Do we see them here? And do we see any here? No, they're none here. So we'll make a cut on the seagull track. And we'll just name this so that we can keep track of what we're doing. Seagulls. Then we'll jump down. Then they show up in this one, but not in this one. So we'll make a couple cuts here as well. You know, anytime you make a mistake, Control Z is your best friend. So we'll delete that one. And then on this one, I can't see any birds, so we will remove it from this one. Actually, remove it from these two. There we go. We'll do the same thing. A slight fade in and a slight fade out on both tracks. And then we'll grab the whole thing. Actually, no, we're not going to grab the whole thing. We're going to grab this first one because we said the seagulls, they are pretty far away. So we'll drop this sound, this volume, and let's see how that feels. That's not bad. Let's go a little bit softer because they're pretty far away. So it's very subtle, but it's in the background. With all of this stuff, less is more. Whether it's color grading or sound design, less is more. That's a good principle to keep in mind. So just jump over to this one. That's a bit too loud, even though they're nearby. We'll bring it down a bit. So this one we did at 17, negative 17, this one at negative 10. Let's see what that sounds like. That's not bad. So we'll work with that. Now, let's pull up our waves. And we throw the waves onto the timeline. There we go. So now this waves, let's go over this real quick. You know how to mute the track already, but this S stands for solo. So it's a way of muting everything but one track, whereas mutes just one track. So if I just want to hear what the seagulls sound like, on their own. I just hit the solo, and now only the seagulls will be heard, like that. I can solo multiple tracks. So if I just want the seagulls and the wind, like that. So we'll turn those two off, and let's see what the waves sound like by themselves. All right, that's not bad. So the tricky thing with these waves, this is the sound of the waves on the shore, crashing onto the shore, not the sound of waves that you typically get when you're out in the middle of the sea. So we want to keep that in mind. If we don't see the shore, or if we're, let's kind of judge it a little bit. We just gotta be tasteful with this. So this is not a bad sound to have for this clip. Maybe this one is a little too far away for that sound. And you can't really see, you can tell this water isn't really making that sound. It's too calm. So maybe we just save it for the points where we actually see the shore and keep it very, very light. So we'll cut it right here. And we'll do the same right here. And then we'll also drop this sound. Let's bring it down a lot. And let's see what that sounds like. Okay, maybe that's too much. We can't even hear it. So just up a smidge. Right, a little splash there. There it is. That's not bad. That's not bad. And the thing to keep in mind too is these sounds, if you're getting them from a free source or you're doing them yourself, they haven't been EQ'd, or what do you call that? When the levels have been set. So you can't really just say, oh, I'm gonna have waves, so that's -13, and set it to -13 as your volume. Or I'm gonna have music, I'm gonna set it to 12 as your volume. You kind of have to feel it with your ears to see what actually would make sense in this scenario. If you're getting it from a professional source, maybe you can say, oh, this volume level or this range is where this sound would normally be. Okay, so now we have some of our sound effects in. Let's see it all in context. I know we don't have any for this, but to be fair, there's nothing too crazy happening in these shots. Maybe we'll bring some of the wind back very lightly, just to keep some texture. Let's see what that sounds like. And then I'll drop the volume on this specifically, just very low, just to keep some of the texture. But let's see the sound effects by themselves. That's nice. That's nice. Another trick that you can do is not cut the sound immediately as a clip ends. So that's called J and L cuts, where the audio either comes in before you see the clip or the audio stays a little while after you see the clip. So with the seagulls, we can drag them just a smidge longer and to come in just a smidge earlier and stay a little bit longer just after the clip changes. It just helps the feeling. And what we'll do as well is I'll add a new track. And I'll bring this lighter wind down and do the same thing. So it kind of overlaps with the other wind. Just so we get that continuous feeling. And I'll call this light wind. And as you can tell, this gets complex really quickly. You may have sound effects like whooshes or hits, things like that, things that don't happen in real life, but that add extra texture to your video. So it's also helpful to color these tracks differently. So maybe for the wind, if I right click, I can go to change track color, and wind feels like it's let's say it's tan. So now whenever I see this color, I know I'm dealing with my wind. I'll change this one as well to tan. So these are all, oh, this is beige. These are all my wind tracks. Seagulls, let's see, we can change them to orange, for instance. And my waves, I can change those to blue or navy or even teal, though that water was kind of teal. Yeah, that's nice. So now when I look at my whole track, I can see, okay, this is clearly my wind, this is my seagulls, and these are my waves. Let's also do the same with the waves. Let's drag them a little bit before, fade them out a little bit as well. We'll do the long fade at the end for this one. And then the same thing over here, drag it out, fade it. Let's give this one more listen. Nice. And now let's turn off the mute on our track for our song, our super cool song. And let's see what that sounds like. So this song might be just a smidge too loud because we're struggling to hear our sound effects. So let's lower the song just a smidge and let's see what that sounds like. Maybe a little bit more. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. So now, congratulations. You have done your edit, you've cut the tracks up, you've done your music, you've synced them to the beat, you went in, did some color grading as well, adding your LUT to the track, adding your LUT to the clip. What else did we do? Oh, we added contrast, saturation, we matched the clips up so now they all look like they belong together. And you even come and done sound design, add in sound effects and different ambient noises so that the track feels even more real. Here's the last thing before you're done with your first drone video. We're gonna jump all the way to the rocket ship. First, we're gonna go to YouTube, click the down arrow, go to 2160p. That's just this second part of the 4K resolution. So 4K is 3840 by 2160. So 2160p. We're gonna choose our file name, my drone video. We choose a location as well. World-class videos. And we'll leave everything else. Go right to the bottom and click add to render queue. Now, if you pop up over here, you'll see a new job 1, my first drone video, timeline 1. And it'll give you the location of where your video is going to be saved. Then you click render all. Takes about 4 seconds based on the length of this video. And once it's done, it'll say completed in 8 seconds. So now we can jump to the folder where we saved it. And then we can open the video. And here's our first drone video. And just like that, you've made your first drone video. How are you feeling? The thing is, this is not about perfection, it's just about progress. And every time you film and edit and make a video, you're going to be building your creative eye and that muscle. So feel good about yourself. Now, if you want all of this in a much condensed version, there's a video on that. But remember, you can always start the series from the beginning by clicking the playlist here.